This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Sahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellowwallpod.
Hello and welcome to episode 345 of the Yellowwallpod. I'm your host Stefan Butzko, and today we will talk about Borussia Dortmund's narrow 3-2 defeat against Bayern Munich and what that match will mean for the rest of the Bundesliga title race. For that and more joins me Archie Rhind-Tutt. Hello Archie, how are you doing?
Hey Stefan, I'm doing very well. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. I'm delighted to have you here. Obviously, right now you are the field reporter for ESPN, right? Is that the correct work description?
Yeah, I think that's correct. Pitchside reporter for the Bundesliga and ESPN FC Bundesliga correspondent. So you can see me having a chat with Dan Thomas most Monday nights alongside Steve Cherundolo.
Yeah, that's very cool. Obviously, most people already know you from your exploits at Fox and the Bundesliga. So you are a very prominent face, but unfortunately, people do not get to see you this time because this is a podcast. And because this being a podcast, that means I have a bit of housekeeping to do. This is a good time to announce that due to this being an international break, we'll do an international break Q&A next week, so it's probably going to be Lars, Matthias, and I at the helm. I don't know if Konstantin will make it, but pepper us with questions. You can send us the questions to our Twitter at Yellowwallpod. You can even use the hashtag YWP346 if you will, to make it easier for me. You can send us also questions to Facebook at Yellowwallpod. Leave them in the YouTube comments of this episode. Shoot us a direct message on our Patreon, which you can find on patreon.com/theyellowwall, or shoot us an email at yellowwallpod@gmail.com. And while we're here, might as well announce the sponsor for our episode.
Wir sind komplett schuldenfrei. Wir zahlen keinen einzigen Euro an Zinsen.
And this episode is sponsored by Zach Hill, who is excited about Youssoufa Moukoko, who turned 16 on November 20th, which means he will be eligible to play on the 21st against Hertha BSC. We will see whether he'll actually make the matchday squad, but Zach is definitely excited about having a backup for Erling Haaland, and I think so are we all. And now I think it's time to dive into the game, which was Borussia Dortmund against FC Bayern Munich, second against first. And unfortunately, the black and yellows were not the winners in this outcome. But Archie, I think it's fair, since I have you of all people here, before we actually talk about the game, may I ask how the entire matchday experience was for you, considering that there were no people in the stands? So you basically arrive at the parking lot, and what happens then? What things are different for a reporter now than they were before?
I can never quite get used to going to Borussia Dortmund with no fans being there at all, because from the moment you step off the train at Dortmund Hauptbahnhof, usually you sense it's match day. And right now I have to rent a car. I have to drive to Dortmund due to pandemic rules. And
yeah, you don't want to be caught on a Rona train.
No, I have taken the train before, and I have to say most of the time it's empty, but it's very different. Ghoulish, I would almost say. You can almost hear the ghosts of the fans,
and that's
kind of
in
blowing
the pulsating
through.
metropolis that is the Ruhrgebiet.
Yeah, and look, when you arrive, you have to get tested. You have to fill out a formula saying that you're not suffering under any corona symptoms, and then you walk into the stadium. And my route to where I was working on Saturday for ESPN took me underneath the yellow wall, and you're walking past all these murals done by the various ultra groups, and there's something quite special being able to see all of these works of art up close. But on the other hand, it feels like you're trespassing on someone else's turf. It feels like you shouldn't be here and you're about to get chased out. I also actually I use the toilets underneath the infamous Block 12, and let me tell you that with no fans there for 7 months, you really wouldn't know it. It smells appalling. So like you can still smell the fans in some sense, but sadly you can't hear them. And as much as I love my job and I feel it's a great privilege to do what I do, there is another part of me which is just like, it's just not the same without fans. And as much as the game on Saturday was a very good one, it just doesn't compare with what a normal match day is, what I should say normal in inverted commas match day is at Borussia Dortmund pre-pandemic.
Yeah, it probably is eerie. I mean, Lucien Favre after the game said that this was probably a good game for the TV audience, and then bemoaned that there were no people in the stands. But you actually were in the stands, so do you sit at the press stand where you usually sit, and then walk down for whenever you need to be down, or where do you park during the 90 minutes so you have a good view of what's going on field?
So I sit in the normal press stand, which is almost the identical view that you get at home as a TV viewer. And then after the game, because of Corona regulations, I was asking my questions to Erling Haaland and Gio Reyna this time over like a talkback box. So I was still sitting up in the stands, but they could hear me out of a speaker, which was just down by the side of the pitch where they were standing. So that was a little bit surreal. It felt a little bit like I was working in some sort of power plant, and I was kind of sending messages to them. It didn't feel kind of normal, because particularly as a pitch side interviewer, one of the biggest things for me is being able to have eye contact and be able to see the person who I'm talking to. And even if that is usually with a mask, it does help, because I think that they get a greater feeling for how you're trying to empathize with them after a game. When I have an interviewee, I don't want to scare them off. I want to try and be on their side and hear what their thoughts are. I think
I kind of like the idea of the magic
job.
Archie box asking questions, however.
That's my job. But yeah, it was a bit surreal. So normally if I'm working for the Bundesliga World Feed, then you are pitch side. That is one of the holy positions where you do get to stand within 4 meters of the players, but then you have like a massive boom pole, so like a long microphone being put on the end of a stick, which is then kind of ushered out by some strong men. Although, believe it or not, if you see some of the technical guys that work there, some of them I'm kind of like, how are you able to have the muscle strength to hold that microphone for as long as you do?
Yeah, you just need to lever it the right way, I guess.
Exactly. Exactly. But I get to hold my own microphone, so I'm in a fortunate position.
Yeah. It's great to hear that you have these privileges, but obviously they are earned, since I know Archie a very long way back. I know the work he puts in, and he is one of the best. So I'm very happy that you actually got the gig. Very much deserved. Now, that gig obviously entails now that you by yourself for the next half hour with me asking any questions whatsoever, just in one streamline analyze this entire game. Go.
Hey, all good. All good. Fire away, Stefan. Fire away.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the lineups, obviously. I think that was my main gripe right after the game and already before the game, is that the lineup to me looked pretty good, apart from the midfield, because I was really hoping for Mahmoud Dahoud to play instead of Axel Witsel. And I think the overall performance by Witsel sort of justified my opinion. Not that Witsel had a particularly bad game, but he is just a player that's very slow. I mean, it's in one regard very valuable because he's very calm in midfield, and the way he distributes the ball can really help. But Dortmund against Bayern need to move the ball around a bit quicker than they did, even though I think their possession stints in most parts were really good. But especially in the first half, in the beginning where Dortmund reverted to a lot of long balls, I thought you wanted to have someone who was a bit quicker in the counter pressing and a bit more crisp in midfield. So to me, in the big midfield battle, which obviously was also influenced by an injury, which we'll talk about in a second, I thought of all the things that Lucien Favre did right, this might be the one thing that he might have done wrong. But that's just my opinion. Archie, what's yours?
You see, one of the things that I found since coming to Germany is, which I did some 5 years ago, is a new appreciation of watching the Sechser, as you call it, the number sixes, because the way that I watch football in the UK, I have to say that a lot of the time I didn't really notice them. And now I kind of understand the game better in that it's almost like, instead of watching the ball, it's like watch the two holding midfielders and you get more of an understanding of the game. And even doing that, I have to say, I really struggled to notice Axel Witsel on Saturday. And I think that Thomas Delaney, he would have been the person I would have placed more of a question mark over. I know Axel Witsel's not been in great form recently and was rightfully dropped the other week as well. But I think I can understand why Favre still went with him, particularly when you are playing against Leon Goretzka and Joshua Kimmich, two players who are not afraid to bully you off the ball. And I think that it made sense to me going with Witsel and Delaney, because against Bayern, against most teams, you're maybe going to face the attacking midfielder in Borussia Dortmund's case. But against Bayern, you're going to face more of Kimmich and Goretzka driving at you, because Thomas Müller, he's gone. He's behind you. You've not got anything to do with him most of the time. So I thought that the selection of Witsel was still justified. I thought that the biggest decision was selecting Mats Hummels after training a bit on Friday and then doing an individual training session on the Saturday morning, because this isn't the first time that Mats Hummels has come into this game. Dortmund against Bayern, last time on the Bayern side, when Dortmund won 3-2 in Lucien Favre's first edition of this fixture a few years ago, when he came in half fit and was very much blowing in the second half. And I don't think it was as noticeable this time, but if you look at all three goals, and after the game he was pointing out how they were all deflected, it's like, well, the fact that you're saying they're deflected almost points out in itself. It's like, are you trying to deflect away from the fact that these goals are being conceded? Because they're like, the first goal, he misses the challenge, which then Delaney has to go and foul Serge Gnabry for the free kick in a very dangerous position, regardless of it being being deflected in. If you give away a free kick there against a top class side, you're in trouble. The second goal, he's beaten by Lewandowski in the air. And whilst that can happen, at the same time, he's pushing off. Like, if you're trying to jump, then like you do need your hamstring. You need every inch of your body to be there. And I question whether it was. The third goal, timing of his challenge, but then again, I really struggle to criticize a defender who's tired against Leroy Sané running in behind him. It's like, good luck. And his challenge almost said that as well. But I thought that Hummels was the big decision. The question is, what other options did Lucien Favre have? And I think that the risk reward that he ultimately ended up taking was, well, it'll probably be better playing a 70% fit Hummels than it would be, say, playing Axel Witsel there or Emre Can, who's not been able to train in 2 weeks.
Yeah, you immediately put your finger right into the wound there, because obviously Mats Hummels, before he picked up the injury, was in absolute world-class form. And I think you're absolutely right that in this game, he was not the same Mats Hummels that we've seen pre-injury. And I was wondering that too, how good will he be after like 5 minutes of training and praying that everything holds? And we've seen it. Mats Hummels obviously had a couple of good moments like he always has, especially a couple of really nice passes to open up the game, which was important. But he wasn't as crisp and as sharp as he could have or should have been. And that's in this game in particularly, it's really problematic though. I would say this when Lewandowski scored the header for the 2-1. That's a really tough one to defend. I've seen him score this type of goal a million times already. And it was unfortunate that Hummels sort of deflected the ball. I think it was with his shoulder, right? Sort of extended the header even further away from Berkey into the far corner. I don't know if I really want to criticize Hummels there, because when Lewandowski is in the air like this, he sort of gets the angle and everything right. I mean, you can push him off, but a lot of defenders who were 100% fit have already failed to defend that. But the way he went down for the third one, and obviously the mistimed or the misposition before the first Bayern goal was obviously very unfortunate and not very Hummels-like. So I think in that regard, you are correct. So
it's 2 out of 3 you're giving me.
Yeah, I do.
I'll take that.
or let's say 2.5.
That's a pass.
2.5. Yeah. I wasn't keeping score, but fair enough. No, but how did you perceive the first half in general? Because it was interesting to see how Dortmund had a very strong first 5 minutes or so, and then a lot of long balls, and Bayern sort of clawed away from the game and then took more dominance, and then obviously Dortmund were the ones to open the scoring. What did you make of the alternating phases of the first half alone?
Well, that's it. It was alternating for the first 20 minutes. What helps me to remember phases of the game is that I actually have a little notepad which I put any Bayern action in red and I put any Dortmund action in black, because I've got a 4-way pen, and I'm very proud of that.
You are. Your parents are so disappointed right now that you are not a doctor.
Weirdly
great,
close to the
4-way
truth.
pen. That's exactly what we had in mind for our son. Oh no! Oh well.
Weirdly close to the truth. It does help me at least to get an idea of the flow of the game. And I think for the first 21 minutes, I'm looking here and it goes red, black, red, black, red, black, red, black. And then there's just a little bit of a phase of red.
I don't know why in my mind the alternating colors were yellow and red, but obviously those usually come not in yellow, but black and
4-way
green,
pens
blue.
come where I come from. 4-way pens come in red, black, green, and blue. So which covers most of the teams in the Bundesliga. I can usually associate at least one color with a team who's playing, which is advantageous. If there was a team playing in orange, I might struggle. Anyway, I feel I'm distracting away from the actual question that you asked me here.
No, it's entirely my fault. I take 100% of the blame.
All good. It's just adding a bit of colour to the conversation anyway. There was a phase before the half-hour mark where when Bayern scored their first disallowed goal through Robert Lewandowski, and he got in between Hummels and Akanji, that I really thought Bayern are taking control of the game here in a similar way that they did in the same fixture last season during the first lockdown set of fixtures that we had. And the moment that Kimmich got injured, there was suddenly Bayern players shrank and the Dortmund players grew. That's how big a player I think that Kimmich is for Bayern. But also it was more Dortmund believing it's like, hang on, we can do this. We've got them here. And that phase, I think, would have been maybe felt more if the fans had been there. But I thought that for the most part, like, there was still what stands out for me is Marco Reus yelling at Gio Reyna after he didn't quite get to a pass. Dortmund, it still felt they lacked just that touch of decisiveness in front of goal. When Erling Haaland was slipped through by Gio Reyna after 21 minutes, there was a point where you would have expected him to shoot, but he just took a half a second longer, which I thought is very un-Haaland-esque.
Yeah, it's very true.
The Erling Haaland I know, even if he's making a decision about where to put the ball, he's made that decision and then he sticks with it. But the way that the ball just dribbled wide, I was like, that's not... Who hit that? That wasn't Erling Haaland. And I wonder, we know about the depth of tactical instruction that Lucien Favre imparts to his players in terms of the detail, the level of detail that he goes into, whether it's about how you're holding your hands or what foot you're pushing off on. I wonder if Haaland is overthinking things a little bit. There was the chance in the second half, which I'm sure we'll come to as well, just before Bayern made it 2-1. And Haaland strikes me as somebody who is total instinct. When he's at his best, you can't deal with him because he doesn't even know what he's going to do. He's just in this wild fit of rage that he plays in, and you can see that, in the celebrations, just how much adrenaline is in him. And the one thing I don't think you want to do with Erling Haaland is tame him. And I wonder if he's maybe started overthinking things a little bit. He's recognizing that, hang on, Manuel Neuer's in goal here. I need to put this in a specific place. And actually, the best thing he could do would be to just go full Erling and hammer the ball as much as possible, because it's something that not a lot of players can do, and it's something that he's done very well in the past. So Haaland's out of characterness stuck out for me, but also the way that the game seemed to swing back in Dortmund's favour after that Kimmich injury, that really stood out. And then Dortmund don't defend the final counterattack of the half, and look what happens. You go in at 1-1, and I think that really took the sting out of Dortmund, and it took the sting out of their belief that, okay, Kimmich is gone. It's like, okay, they're still dangerous. Well, maybe we're not as safe as we were.
Yeah, I think you made a couple really excellent points, which is something that I discover anew for every Dortmund against Bayern game, where I can literally see the Dortmund players overthinking. It's very normal, I think, in such a high stakes game, that things that they usually do, like passing routines and getting certain angles or controlling a ball in a certain way, they usually get easily right. Some moments just get a little adrift. And I think that's just normal, that you feel a bit more pressure just because you know it's Bayern and mistakes are more costly. You know, it's just the same how you're more nervous to do an exercise in the math test when you know it's being graded versus when you know you can just do this exercise without any scrutiny. I think it's a very similar thing, that nerves do play a role, and so even Erling Haaland is not completely immune from that. We've seen in this game in particular. It's also just a little weird that this one hesitation, as you said, is so unlike him, just because usually he just lashes it, and he is the master of the off balance shot that you almost don't see coming, and gets a lot of power and precision behind it. And for some reason he didn't do that. And yeah, obviously the way Dortmund then defended the counterattack that yielded in this free kick was quite shocking, I must say. I don't know.
It was just so soft. I mean, just to pick up on the Haaland point, of course he can finish in other ways, but he goes for the far corner against Borussia Mönchengladbach, I think, for example, and he went for that little chip against Frederic Renaud against Schalke. But it's even in those positions, I think he knows what he's doing. And I think the problem is just more this hesitancy.
Yeah, usually he is very flowing in his movements and doesn't have a hesitation, unless, of course, you're Paco Alcácer and then you try to funk Manuel Neuer out by pretending to shoot and then not shooting and then having a chip, which is
that was fun.
Yeah, that was really fun.
I remember when he scored that goal and being in the stadium that night, and just the way that the ball dribbled towards goal, and you could hear the yellow wall like almost sucking the ball in, and just like it's weird seeing part of a stand knowing that the ball, well, part of 20,000 people on one block knowing that the ball's going in, and the other half being like, should we believe them? Should we celebrate with them as well, or are we going to be punished because we still see that Manuel Neuer is the goalkeeper there, and if you celebrate too fast, like surely Neuer's not misjudged Alcácer, and it's like, oh no, he has. But yeah, I remember the celebrations to that goal. That was wild, and now I'm missing fans again. Thanks, Steph.
Yeah, I'm very sorry about that. So let's quickly move on to the next subject, which is Rafael Guerreiro, because he had an excellent night, I thought. And let's talk about obviously the first Dortmund goal that was scored by Marco Reus, and the inside of the boot shot of Reus, which was like very difficult to do, like from the pass that he got by Guerreiro, just the way he opened his body position to just sort of deflect the ball sort of into the net, but still getting power on it. And Manuel Neuer's Reclamier arm wasn't fast enough to save that one. So Archie, I know I just sort of pivoted to Reus right away, but Rafael Guerreiro, in many sense of the word, had a really terrific night. Only not the result, but his passes and his masterclass in that sense was really great.
It's about the way that he hits the ball technically. I think that's what makes him stand out, and that's what enables him to play some of these balls which you don't see many other players, I'd say even in world football, playing. Like the pass to Haaland, the assist for the second goal, it's more of a scoop. It's not really a chip, because it's just the way that it's something I think you'd expect more in beach football, not in
it's true.
Not in
it's true.
in football on grass, really. And just the way he's able to use the outside of his boot, I think that's what really sets him apart. And the assist for Reus is good, but as you say, it took me until seeing a reverse angle of the Reus goal to realise that actually Reus is having to play that on the bounce, and to find the right balance in your body to play that is quite some technical skill as well. So yeah, kudos to Reus. I know there was a chance in the 86th minute that went begging, where it's a volley on his wrong foot, 12 yards from goal. And the thing, I think the problem for Marco Reus is his reputation of how good a striker of the ball he is, and how good his technique is, and how he scored a ridiculous half volley in this fixture back in that 3-2 game we keep referencing a while back. It makes you think, that was a really big chance for, if it had been, say, Thomas Meunier there, then I think a clumsier result would have been more expected. Not that I'm against Thomas Meunier, by the way. I actually think, whilst he may not be as technically gifted as some of his teammates, such as Rafael Guerreiro, he runs an unbelievable amount. I was checking the statistics after the game, and he ran 12.6 kilometers, which was more than any other player on the pitch. And I just remember looking up after reading that statistic, being like, oh, where's Meunier? And I just saw him kind of in a starfish pose on the far side of the pitch, just kind of like absolutely blowing. And I was like, okay, yeah, no, that makes some sense. But yeah, to your original point, Guerreiro, particularly from from that left back position. Such a valuable asset for Dortmund, and not one of the players that you hear talked about, I'd say, in the English speaking world when everyone's raving about Dortmund. But I think people who watch Dortmund every week, like yourself and like the people listening to this, know like how good he is. And maybe it's probably best that you don't speak too much about him, because that way he'll stay at the club for just that little bit longer.
Yeah, I mean, it's just very nice to see the arc of Guerrero, how he often did not show up in big games and a bit too timid, and his defensive performance was completely lacking his attacking output. And right now he's putting both these things sort of together, and we're seeing a matured player that's playing in a role that really suits him and is exhilarating I guess in both sense of the word.
Sure.
I'm just really glad to see him perform and play like that and do things so intelligently. I mean, that when he first arrived at Dortmund under Thomas Tuchel, and people weren't quite sure whether he would be played as a number 8 or sort of a half winger, half center guy, somewhere in between, with a lot of freedom, or would he play the left back position like he did for Portugal, because it was just previous to the the European Championship? I think so. It's just really good to see that a guy who everyone wasn't sure, along with Mario Götze, whether he would actually extend his contract and whether he wanted to leave or not. And then in the end, obviously, it was him who extended his contract and not Götze. That he now is such an established figure in this team, and way more of a serious player, I would say, than he was before, because just in the sense of how I would describe his coming of age, maybe, is that he takes himself and his job a little bit more serious now, and I think that really reflects on the field, that his work ethic is much better. He is alert for most of the 90 minutes, opposed to times where he just sort of dipped away and lost oversight, if you will, and started ball watching, and all these kind of little details that you need to improve are there now, and I'm very happy for him. Obviously, there's always room for improvement, but the way he has thrived now under Lucien Favre is something to behold, especially because he worked out really well as a wing back in that 3-5-2 system, and now when Favre finally reverted to a back 4, he is still performing on a very good level, and I think that was one of the main concerns I personally had when Favre reverted to the back 4. What about Guerrero? Often as a left back, as a true left back, he really struggles and can't defend. But right now, he is proving all the critics, and I'm certainly one of them, completely wrong. So this performance alone was obviously a highlight game for him, and obviously a shame that Guerrero couldn't had the team secure at least a point, but coming up against Coman and Gnabry and the way he played, I think was very, very positive. So if we want to highlight one Dortmund player, I think for me he was, I think, the best Dortmund player on the field. Others might disagree and name another one, but I'm certainly very happy with that performance.
He's the perfect kind of embodiment of a Favre player, I think. Intelligent, quiet, but good at picking up on these small technical details and just being that kind of fine technical player, I guess. Like in just knowing when to move into the right areas of the pitch at the right time. And I can't remember seeing Serge Gnabry look frustrated on too many occasions, but there was a moment in the first half where he just kind of had an outburst. It was like, it's not working down this side. And I think that's as great a testament to Rafael Guerrero's performance as anything.
Yeah. Overall, though, let's zoom out a little bit and not talk about players individually. What did you make of both teams and their form and exploits in this game? Because Bayern obviously came into the game as the favorites, I would say, considering their record they are on. And how do you think both performed? Because overall, the headlines, I would say, and the top line reactions from people was, well, first of all, this was a very good game. And I very much agree. So what do you think, Archie, made this a good game? And what were the components that from both sides contributed to that, apart from the goals, obviously?
First of all, Dortmund played well. If Dortmund don't turn up to the party, then this is a different game completely. So that is the first necessary component. Thank you. However, I think that they were able to limit Bayern. That, I would say, from what I've seen of Bayern this season, it was a 6 out of 10 performance by them, and still that's enough to get them over the line, is probably what's going to kill Dortmund the most here, because Bayern were there for the taking. There were the chances. I think the amount of chances in the game, the amount of openings, from what would make it into a highlights package, it's not like there were kind of clear-cut one-on-ones every 5 minutes, but there were lots of moments on the edge of the box where if Dortmund just played that one pass quicker or used or took a shot in a different area, where you would say that those are big openings for these respective sides. So I thought that added to it. Obviously, there is certain bits of narrative that added to it as well. What with the whole David Alaba saga, which has been going on, and that he is the guy after his contract offer was withdrawn, and then Karl-Heinz Rummenigge turns up in Dortmund and says with a twinkle in his eye, there's still a bit of the door open for David. And he's like, oh, come on, you're toying with us. And then he steps up and puts away the free kick. You're like, of course, like this is the sort of thing that happens in big games. And I think there's a lot that this fixture has going for it. As much as I understand people wanting to reject the whole Klassiker thing being shoved in their face, I get it.
You know, it's funny though, because I personally, I'm coming around to it now, because I thought just already before the game, well, in a long time, this could be a game where you actually have this good old Klassiker feeling, like the Dortmund v Bayern feeling, where you know it's going to be a match performed on a very high level, which it was in the Klopp era and also parts of the Tuchel era, where you just knew this was going to be the highest level of German football from so many aspects, be it tactically, be it physically, and just obviously add the entertainment factor. And I think for once it once again proved correct. And I want to have this discussion with someone, like what is a good time where the term Klassiker actually gains a little bit of validity? Do we have to wait a whole decade? Is it 2 decades? How long does it take to coin this term, which was obviously born out of artifice, if you will, and make it sort of stick in a truer sense than it is now? Because, as you say, most people really do reject it because they know it's not quote unquote organically grown out of a very long and rich history. But obviously, for the foreseeable future, this is a rivalry that will be probably unmatched in German football.
Yeah, and people reject it as well, I think, because it's about what modern day football stands for, and people don't like that. That's as much a reason behind that as well. But you mentioned the physicality there. That is, I think, an element that having seen a lot of the Bundesliga now this season, a large chunk of the teams play, no one is able to play with the intensity and raise it to quite the same gear as these two sides in terms of speed and strength. There was a couple of moments.
Screw you in your Red Bull.
Huh?
No, continue. Sorry.
but even Leipzig, Leipzig have a good team, but there's no I don't think they have the same standard of attacking individuals going forward. They have some very, very talented players, but no one quite in the same bracket as Bayern, and maybe not even as Dortmund as well. And I almost see Leverkusen and Gladbach in that same category as well, albeit that the more I watch Florian Wirtz, this 17-year-old wonder kid for Leverkusen, the more I believe that, well, in 3 years' time, he's going to be really quite something if he isn't already now. And there was just a few moments where like Haaland turned on like the you know that bit in Mario Kart when you get the star and you drive or like the bullet and you just drive past everyone else. It felt like he'd had that, and just the way he was able to overtake him, because they were both sprinting, but there was just this next level that came out to go and get the ball, which was still about 5 meters ahead of him. I was like, okay, yeah, you're not having to use that against Mainz, are you? Like there's something I think about when the best sides face each other, that they can really milk the extra percentage points out of one another, and that's what will continue to fuel the hype around this fixture. And I'll try and do that sensitively, because most of my mates on Dortmund and Bayern sides hate the word Klassiker, but at the same time, it's becoming difficult not to, because it's a really good game for the most part. Well, if it's played in Dortmund, it's usually a really good game. When you go down to the Allianz Arena in the last few years, it's a bit more one-sided.
Yeah. Also, I'll put my writer's hat on and I'll just say I like to describe things in eclectic ways, and you obviously do not want to repeat words when you write a blurb or whatever. So just having another phrase to name something comes in very handy. So if you ever see me use it, that's probably why. It's just me being lazy and not caring about anyone's displeasure.
It's like sometimes as a writer, when you've said the team's name once, and then it's like, well, I've got to refer to them again in the next paragraph. Okay, it's like the black and yellows,
die Schwarz-Gelben, the Russ,
yeah, exactly.
The Westphalians, Lucien Favre's men, and on it goes.
Oh, Lucien Favre's side, yeah.
Anywho,
exactly.
We do have a question from Colin James on Twitter, and he says, would love to hear your take on Sancho's run of form lately in an upcoming episode. Such a mercurial player, but struggling to get into matches. At what point do you rotate Royce back to the wing and put Brandt centrally? I'm just gonna flick that one to you, and whether you actually allow the premise of the question or not.
What was the part about him playing centrally, just quickly?
It was basically whether you rotate Royce on the wing for Sancho and then put Brandt centrally. So because right now Brandt and Royce are competing for that number 10 position.
Okay. I think that we need to remember Jadon Sancho is still 20 years old, that there are going to be fluctuations in his form, and we have to accept that his head was turned by the Manchester United mega move that didn't happen.
Give me a break.
If Hans-Joachim Watzke says it was so, as the Dortmund CEO did on Saturday, saying about how he'd had a chat with Sancho and how that he thinks he's ready to go again because like his head was turned by those advances. But also, if I'm right in thinking, I think Lars has said this before, Lars Pollmann that is, saying that, you know, he's forever taken a long time to get into some games, that I think if people with who are doing all the consistent linking of Jadon Sancho to England were to watch him on a 90-minute basis, on a weekly basis, you wouldn't see a player that is forcing his way through and dribbling past everybody with every single run that he makes. That I think sometimes he is best off the bench. And he's still one of the best dribblers in the division, but there's also, I think, a question mark over him of these big games. And in my memory, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the big games against Bayern, I can remember one good half from him, like one really good half, and that was the second half in that 3-2 win.
I think came on as a sub too, if I'm not mistaken.
No, he started that. He started that.
Oh yeah,
yeah. I remember David Alaba having him in his pocket for the first half, but he's still young, and this is something that I think Dortmund fans have to, as much as it hurts, have to accept that when you have a young side, you're, such as the way that the club has chosen to operate, you're making the players who will eventually be the finished product. And I think the frustration for Dortmund fans is that you don't get to see the finished product.
Oh, well, you do. It's Robert Lewandowski smacking you every time over the head with a shovel.
Well, exactly. And I had a chat with a very good friend of mine who's a French football journalist and a big Dortmund fan. And one of the things she said to me is the problem is right now for Dortmund is that as good as these players are, how many people will have the same emotional reaction when Jadon Sancho leaves the club as they did for, say, Dede, as they did for, say, Nuri Sahin or Shinji Kagawa the first time that these things happen. It's the way that things are structured now is very different, and Dortmund is not. It's not like it was a mega destination to go to before Jurgen Klopp created that, and Lucien Favre is still having to work in his very considerable shadow, which the club themselves are also perpetuating by continually bringing players back. I'm not sure how wise it was, if it made sense in a football sense, but how wise it was bringing Mats Hummels back and giving him the status that he has at the club. That's a separate but equally big tangent. The point I'm making is that whilst Sancho's form is frustrating, I wonder in 2 years if there's going to be. I can't think of moments where I know the Yellow Wall has chanted his name on a couple of occasions, but I think he needs to come up in some more big important moments for the club. Of course, the winning goal against Schalke was one of them, but I think that he does need to show more consistency, but at the same time, he is 20, and this is kind of just the way that it goes for Dortmund.
Yeah, I mean, we all know that Jadon Sancho has problems in his sort of work ethic. He is not an Erling Haaland in the sense that he sort of lives on a training ground and does everything 100% for success. I think that Mamba mentality you can talk about is probably not quite instilled into Jadon Sancho yet. However, I would say about this particular game that I thought he had a decent game. And you must...
Took him half an hour, I thought, to find his way in.
Yeah, he does. But, I'm grading him on a curve a little bit now because there were moments in the Bayern game where he was subbed off after half an hour because he was not tracking back and making mistakes left, right, and center. And so far out of it that he was a liability instead of an asset. So this has changed. And obviously, yes, it does take him some time to get into the game. But the problem is, in this particular match, he's also a little bit the victim of Dortmund's, as you so put it, rude opportunities. Because, for example, when he had that really great cross over to Axel Witsel, which he then completely shanks, is an amazing pass and a really great spot, and then Witsel just can't decide whether he wants to play it back into the box or whether he wants to shoot directly, and it just went completely wayward. Not the easiest ball, obviously, to convert, but I've seen Axel Witsel play this ball back into the box, and I know he can, and I think he just made the wrong decision, and obviously that could have been a big chance for Dortmund, and the chance that Dortmund fans probably will speak the most of after this game is right after half-time when Haaland failed to square it and just sort of found the corridor in between Neuer and a teammate. That obviously that pass was also made possible by Jadon Sancho. So I do think he had really good moments in this game, and his quality did help Dortmund to be the team that won the expected goals challenge, if you will, of I think FB Ref has Dortmund winning at 2.0 to 1.1. That's obviously from StatsBomb. Then I've seen different models, but the point stands that I think that overall Sancho had a good and decent performance. It was not outstanding, taking the game and winning it by yourself performances, or the way he sort of dribbled past everyone in that Super Cup win last season, where he really made a fool out of everyone. And I think the first goal he scored there was just completely outrageous. That wasn't the case. We know that he can be more outstanding, but all that being said, I don't think I want to criticize him too harshly right now, especially since we talk about his inconsistency, and while his attacking output lacks a little bit more this season, I will say this, that in terms of the defensive department and staying focused for a longer amount of time and being aware and helping it out, in the defensive department, which he did not do too many times last season, I think he actually did make a big step forward. And I think it's maybe also down to Lucien Favre having a bit of a talk with him about his role. And, I think it helps to, Dortmund being more balanced. And we mustn't forget that he does not have Achraf Hakimi to play off of, because that was also a big factor how Dortmund created a lot of goals, that there was a 1-2 of Hakimi just running into the space where Sancho would pass in, or vice versa. And
that's a very good point.
And Meunier is just a different kind of player, so it's obviously much harder for Sancho to create that momentum. People often see him as this 1v1 player that wins a lot of dribbles, but I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think most of his really good moments come via very very quick and fast. So quick and fast that I try to do it in one word. Combination play.
Yeah, he's able to find those passes into that half space channel between goal and corner.
Of people see it on TV and the players see it too, but by the time they realize that there was an opportunity and someone made a run, exactly that moment has passed, and Jadon Sancho has the quality to exactly play that pass in the tempo that needs to be played in. So that is really the big quality of Jadon Sancho, and I think there's some readjusting to do now that Meunier is there. So I don't know. Yeah, his numbers aren't as great of the last season, but I find this narrative that his head was turned by Manchester United, I find it a little bit lazy as well. I think there are better explanations too. Yeah, maybe it's a part, and obviously I don't want to take it down too many times, but also think that Dortmund's game has just changed a little bit, and Jadon Sancho with it, and he needs to reinvent himself a little bit. But I mean, obviously I'm not in Jadon Sancho's head, and I don't know what's going on. We both know that your mental shape can obviously affect your game and your performance in various ways, and being preoccupied with a potential move to Manchester United, which is obviously a very big club, can probably do something to a 20-year-old. I'm not denying that.
Yeah.
But so this
also planning which Corona party he was going to as well. That's going to take up some energy. To be fair, I stand corrected on performances against Bayern. That Super Cup game, he was good, but then again, it makes me think
it's just a Super Cup. So yeah.
I mean, if I'm working it, long live the Super Cup, okay? But at the same time, the Bundesliga games are more important.
Yeah, but the problem is also that Dortmund often in Bayern games don't, this is sort of a weird argument to make, but because Jadon Sancho is obviously part of that team. You can't just take him out there, but they're collectively so bad that it's really hard to stand out as an individualist, let's say, because Dortmund get shanked at the other end. So it almost doesn't matter what Jadon Sancho does. But then again, he is part of that collective failure if they, get routed at the Allianz, for example. But anyway, let's move on from Jadon Sancho and briefly, because we have talked obviously a bit about the alternating phases of the game, and if you've talked about the Joshua Kimmich injury, and I would love to discuss what that means in the long term for Bayern. But before we do that, quickly, I think the final stretch of the game really were more in Dortmund's hands. And that was obviously due to Jude Bellingham coming on and replacing Thomas Delaney, who was on a yellow card at that moment. I think he came on after 60 minutes. And Julian Brandt obviously then for Jadon Sancho with 20 minutes to go, and Hazard as well for Reina. And I think that really reinvigorated this Dortmund team by a lot, and is probably also the stretch of time where I really think Dortmund could have and arguably should have won it, or at least equalized. I mean, they got one goal in the end, but that's very frustrating, especially in the light that they couldn't defend this one counterattack of Leroy Sané in the 80th minute, which was a classic way of how Dortmund get countered, is when they try to attack, and I think it was Haaland who couldn't control the ball, and then Bayern just overran them. And you talked about Hummel's last-ditch defending and whatnot, but overall, bigger picture, I do think that Dortmund in that phase were the fitter team and in better shape, and were sort of more in control, and sort of it is a bit frustrating to see then they're not taking advantage of it. We have referenced it 3-2 win of now, which is, went in a very similar way, where Bayern Munich were even more dominant back then in the first half and really clobbered Dortmund, and Dortmund were very lucky to get out of this half only being, I don't even know what the scoreline was. Was it
1-0 at half time?
Yeah. So in that regard, it was similar. The Dortmund ended up on top, actually being, having fresher legs and, being able to dominate a little bit more. So since you are from Great Britain, I think you are now also the one to talk about Jude Bellingham and how he changed the game a little bit in Dortmund's favor, considering that I think today he got his call up to the Three Lions after playing for the under-21s last time. So obviously a huge moment for him in his very young stage of his footballing career, so since he is only 17 years old.
Yeah, and it's why, if we come back to the first chat we had about the starting lineup, it made sense to me of having Thomas Delaney almost do the dirty work for an hour, and then you bring on Jude Bellingham. Then you bring on somebody who can drive into these tight areas a bit more against tired legs. I thought that is what helped him to shine. And it is that it's quite a simple thing that I like about Bellingham, I guess, which is when he gets the ball and he plays a pass forward, right, as soon as he plays the pass forward, he's gone. He's moving. And he will go for areas that don't always, I'd say, look obvious to the eye when you're watching them. But I love the way that he goes forward. I don't know about you, Stefan, but I've had to watch football that goes sideways most of my life, so I have a real appreciation for players who go forward in that direction and at that tempo. And I think to have a player like Bellingham who drives forward from deep like he does, that is something that scares teams, particularly I think in Germany as well, where you expect just combination play most of the time. I'd say a lot of the time defenders here aren't prepared for people who are strong on the ball dribblers, or as prepared, shall we say. But I think that Bellingham just has so much maturity with his game and his understanding of it that, exciting player for Dortmund to have. And you wonder how his development curve is going to look. He had a tough time in that game against Lazio the other week, but again, in a similar sense to the way you're talking about Sancho there, so did everybody else. But no, I have to say, from what I've seen of Jude Bellingham so far, another very exciting talent that Dortmund have got. And I think in this game, just by coming on and not trying to overplay, but just doing simple things well and finding spaces where, I don't know, am I contradicting myself if I'm saying overplaying and then finding complicated passes? Probably a little bit.
It's all right. We all contradict ourselves a little bit here and there. So.
What I mean, I guess, is being able to see options that not every other player sees and be quick of mind to take them before those options are gone. I think that's what Bellingham is good at.
You know, I think just the phrase "doing simple things well" is sort of not 100% correctly, because doing simple things in itself and finding sort of a clear structure that to the you say spectator's eye, the moves he makes just feel very obvious because it's what you sort of would expect from you watching the game, but actually making the run into the space that you see from your perspective is maybe not as obvious on the football field as it appears to be. So I think in that regard he's just very intelligent. But what I will add is that I really liked his performance against Arminia Bielefeld, and I'm saying this in the sense that I'm just very glad that he went to the proverbial steel bath that was the English Championship, and really knows these sort of gritty games where you have to get stuck in the as they like to say, and I really do like that he does not really care who his opponent is and always comes out with the same industrious attitude and is very physical about it. And we've heard a lot about box to box midfielders. Thomas Delaney has been called that, but I think he is taking it to another level, that his range between the two boxes is even a little wider than, say, a Delaney or other players that have been labeled a box-to-box midfielder, because he does actually go into the box as well. And he is not the biggest goal threat per se, but he does make things happen. So it was kind of poetic that he was the one to get his head to the very last chance that Dortmund had, which obviously then was a very tame sort of lobbed header, which Manuel Neuer had zero trouble of saving. But I have to say I'd forgotten that he'd had that chance, because I think at that point I was so much in my zone of what am I going to ask here? I have to say my concentration levels sometimes when I'm working at games goes down, particularly in the last 10 minutes of a game, because you're just like, okay, so what should I say here, and what might get a good answer there? It completely passed me by that Bellingham had that final chance. This is completely normal. When I used to write the player ratings for ESPN, I was pretty much just seeing the laptop screen instead of the field, and you only sort of raise your eyes just over the screen to peek what's going on when you hear like the audience, having a rise. I really know that feeling that you sort of have to rewatch the game at some point to really know what's going on. It's kind of counterproductive because you do need to rate players, and especially in very crucial moments that happen late in the game that sort of influences the score. And then you're missing crucial parts is not ideal, but hence is the job that you're tasked with. So, but
it's got to be some sacrifice.
Yeah. Sacrifice is a very good word, because Joshua Kimmich sacrificed himself clumsily and ill-advisedly trying to foul and stop Erling Haaland, which was a very dumb idea, and he paid dearly with the snapped LCL, I think. So he already underwent surgery and will at least be out for the rest of the year. if not longer. So obviously we have raved a little bit about Joshua Kimmich. In the last episode, we talked about how he is has the most punchable face of all Bayern players. But we tried to
be nice.
Yeah, but we tried to connect it with his importance for Bayern and how great of a player he actually is. We had to admit, unfortunately. So Archie, we saw obviously a game between Bayern and Dortmund where the teams were very close on one level, I would say, and they're only 3 points apart now. So it's not like this kills off the title race. So what do you think this Kimmich injury will mean for the rest of the year and how the season will continue? Do you think this weakens Bayern enough so that Dortmund can get another sniff at them? Or do you think it's over?
I just can't see.
706, he asks.
I just can't see this Hansi Flick team letting up, even if Corentin Tolisso is coming into that, and I don't think he's quite at the same level as Joshua Kimmich. I think every time that you think, okay, so Alphonso Davies is injured. Well, Lucas Hernandez hasn't looked all that good, and then Hernandez has a run in the team, and it's like, oh yes, no, I can see why they paid 80 million euros for him. He is very, very good. Yes, okay. So there's always a strong option there who, if that said player is given the right run of games, which even at the top level is just as important as in any level of football, I think. Then they will perform. And I think Tolisso this is a big chance for Tolisso, because I don't think you would say that in his time at Bayern he's really proved to be worth the 40 million that they paid or so to get him from Lyon. So I think he's a good player, and I'm looking forward to seeing a bit more of him. And the thing is it going to weaken Bayern enough? I think we could maybe be talking about something interesting happening if the guy who was injured for a couple of months was Robert Lewandowski.
Fair enough.
Then it'd be like, okay. But even as good as Kimmich is, I think he's a central axis to this team, 100%. But I just see so much strength in that Bayern side that even if they are going to concede a couple of goals every now and then, when you can bring on Leroy Sané, you're in a very good position. So
it's kind of weird.
I still see this as Bayern's title.
I think a lot of Dortmund fans had almost forgotten about Leroy Sané because he is not playing the role that one might assume yet for Bayern. Like, he is, I think, a super sub. And then you almost didn't notice that he came on for Coman, and all of a sudden he pops up in front of Hummels and Akanji and then sticks the ball away with his, I think it was pretty much his only chance, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. But he's taken over that very proud Bayern number 10 mantle of, you wear the number 10 at Bayern, so what you need to do is you need to cut inside onto your left foot and just bend it into the far corner. And he's doing that very well.
How very annoying.
I have to say they are really quite something to watch. Watching this Bayern side live at times has
all right. It was nice to have you on.
Has been very exciting as a neutral observer. So yeah, I won't twist the knife any further.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good time to knock it on the head. Unless of course you have any final points you absolutely want to make that I have not led you onto with my questioning. Just
thinking of anything else I saw that might be of interest. Seeing Lucien Favre dance around in anger on the pitch as he waited to do his interview with Sky, and I say that in terms of he was dancing around trying to show the Dortmund press officer Sascha Fliger something, obviously that he was unhappy about in the game. I think that's something I'd raise because I don't see that too often from Favre. That sort of animation is something that I always hear in Germany is lacking from him. You know, he's not passionate enough, which I think is not true. It's just he's passionate about football in a very different way. Whilst Jurgen Klopp would beat his chest and roar, Lucien Favre just turns that energy into rewinding his videotape to find that extra detail of somebody's left foot being out of place. So that's just how it manifests itself.
I mean, it is noticeable that he once again said that at the post-game press conference that he sort of criticized his players for not being well enough playing the ball with their weaker foot. And I think it's true, especially against Bayern, because Bayern players defensively are so good at closing you down in a way that you are often forced to play with your weaker foot, and then the outcome and the result is not as hoped and wished for by a Dortmund coach. So I can definitely see that criticism because I notice it myself even. So it's kind of sort of his slant, if you will. It's kind of the Favre swagger to go after that. But I think good old Lulu has come out of his shell a little bit this season. So he's definitely more noticeable on that pitch side.
Lulu.
I know, it's the most hilarious nickname.
Oh, there we go.
Anyway, Archie, please tell our listeners how to find you on Twitter.
They can find me giving video previews and the odd review from car parks and Bundesliga stadiums at ArchieRT1 on Twitter.
Yeah, is there anything of ESPN world that you want or need to plug, or a podcast?
Catch me on ESPN FC mostly after Bundesliga weekends, sometimes before them, and scroll down in the comments to see me described as Adam Lallana's put on some weight, or well, look at him now, talked up Nagelsmann to be better tactically than Solskjaer, but look what happened. This didn't age well, lol. So yeah, if you want to see hot takes go badly, at ArchieRT1 on Twitter.
Very well, yeah. Hot takes going badly is obviously nothing that would ever occur on at Stefan Butzko's feed. Just completely unheard of. 100% record of being correct. Everyone knows that.
Oh, exactly.
So, you can follow all of us at Yellowwallpod, and obviously subscribe to the show on YouTube, iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Spotify, etc. And once again, a reminder, if you want to shoot us a question for our Q&A, do this via the various means I've already indicated. So Twitter, I think, is the best way, or an email. And if you want to sponsor an episode like Zach, then go to patreon.com/theyellowwall for more information. And if you do that, also please maybe hit me a direct message immediately with the shout out that you want to have read out, because Patreon is a little clumsy sometimes and doesn't let me know as it should. So if I don't see it, don't be mad at me. It just might be Patreon being stupid, or I'm not diligent enough. One of the two, so do be mad at me. But either way, once again, as always, thank you for listening, and obviously big thanks for Archie to lending his expertise for this episode. And we will be back with the international break Q&A, and hope until then all the Dortmund players do stay fit and do not get the Rona. Good.